Dobrze, więc dzień dobry, dobry wieczór wszystkim. Bardzo serdecznie Państwa, tak licznie, aż powiem szczerze, jestem pod ogromnym wrażeniem, cześć, zgromadzonych. No, okazja jest, powiedziałbym, mało sympatyczna. Wolałbym, żebyśmy się spotykali w tym znamienitym gronie przy jakichś bardziej optymistycznych albo wesołych okazjach, ale dzisiejsze spotkanie powstało zupełnie, tak wiecie Państwo, spontanicznie i tak bardzo, jak to się mówi, na prędce zostało zorganizowane, dlatego że na Bliskim Wschodzie zawsze coś się dzieje, ale w tym momencie dzieje się bardzo wiele. To nasze spotkanie zatytułowane tak roboczo Iran 1926 za swój główny powód, dla którego się tutaj zbieramy, ma oczywiście trwającą kampanię izraelsko-amerykańską przeciwko Iranowi, czy też wojnę, jak tokolwiek nazwiemy. Więc przepraszam za pewien chaos, bo jestem jakoś tak się zestresowałem, że Państwa jest tak tutaj dużo jeszcze w internetach, więc przed radioodbiornikami, czy to tak jakoś tak człowiek się czuje. Słucham?
Tak, szkło ucięte.
Aha, dobra. Nie, bo chciałem tak patrzeć na Państwa, więc przepraszam. Będą sobie musieli jakoś poradzić Państwo w internetach. Więc dzisiaj mamy trójkę gości. Jest z nami pani profesor Anna Krasnowolska, która jest już pracownikiem emerytowanym, ale trzyma rękę na pulsie. Jest pani dr Karolina Rakowiecka-Zgiary z naszej Katedry Iranistyki. I mamy panią doktor habilitowaną Joannę Bocheńską, która jest również z Katedry Iranistyki, a równocześnie kieruje pracownią studiów kurdologicznych w naszym instytucie, którą też bardzo serdecznie dzisiaj witam. Więc jak Państwo widzicie, dzisiejsza perspektywa będzie w pełni sfeminizowana. Dwójka naszych gości, których zapraszałem, to znaczy pan Marcin Krzyżanowski i pan Jakub Gajda niestety nie mogli dzisiaj do nas dotrzeć. Bardzo z tego powodu żałuję, ale czasu mamy niewiele, jest godzina 18:08. Zostałem poinformowany, że najpóźniej o godzinie 20 powinniśmy skończyć, więc zaczniemy naszą dyskusję i potem przejdziemy do pytań i do naszych ekspertów. Więc może, żeby nie przedłużać, to ja tylko przypomnę, że właściwie wszystko zaczęło się w sobotę i od tego czasu jesteśmy bombardowani wieloma informacjami, takim szumem medialnym. Z każdą kolejną godziną dowiadywaliśmy się coraz to nowszych informacji tłumaczących powody, przyczyny podjęcia tej interwencji, czy też tej wojny przez Izrael i Stany Zjednoczone względem Iranu. Cały czas właściwie jesteśmy w takim szumie informacyjnym i docierają do nas wiadomości, które wymagają potwierdzenia czy też sprawdzenia. Wojnę czy te wydarzenia, jak Państwo widzicie, jak Państwo śledzicie je na bieżąco, rozwijają się niezwykle dynamicznie, łącznie z tym, że zginął, czy został zabity, jakkolwiek to ujmiemy, najwyższy przywódca Iranu Ali Khamenei. Teraz trwają kwestie związane z jego wyborem i ledwie wczoraj wieczorem dowiedzieliśmy się, że sam Donald Trump postanowił wziąć czynny udział w wyborze najwyższego przywódcy. Nie wiem, na jakiej zasadzie on sobie to wyobraża, ale być może, jeśli mogę pozwolić sobie na antyamerykański żart, okazał się być ukrytym po prostu szyickim duchownym, który postanowił w ten sposób rozprawić się ze światowym imperializmem amerykańskim. Ale przechodząc do poważnych rzeczy, to ja w takim razie pozwolę sobie oddać głos naszym dzisiejszym gościniom i nie wiem, ja może bym zadał pierwsze takie pytanie i zobaczymy, w którą to pytanie nam pójdzie to stron, więc ponieważ mamy przed sobą 3 literaturoznawczynie, więc ja pozwoliłbym sobie zacząć trochę może niestandardowo, nie od takich stricte kwestii politycznych, ale tego, w jaki sposób obecnie, czy też współcześnie te wydarzenia, czy też te napięcia, z którymi mamy do czynienia w Iranie, występują, czy dają się objawić, znajdują swój wyraz w literaturze, filmie, czy też sztuce, bo jak gdyby rozumiem, że to są takie przestrzenie, które dla świata irańskiego dla Irańczyków, niezależnie od ich przynależności etnicznej, są takimi ważnymi kwestiami, czy też płaszczyznami porozumienia. I jeśli w ogóle chcecie Pani też coś dodać na samym początku, co mogło umknąć mojej uwadze ze względu na stres, to oddaję Wam głos.
To znaczy, jest tak, że jeżeli chodzi o literaturę i sztukę w ogóle, to ona przez cały okres współczesnego Iranu jest gdzieś blisko związana z tym, co się dzieje. W literaturze wszystkie kolejne wydarzenia polityczne, przemiany społeczne od początku XX wieku, czyli właściwie takiego momentu, kiedy kształtuje się powoli koncepcja konstytucji, później ta konstytucja zostaje uchwalona, ale nie do końca się udaje przeprowadzić reformę konstytucyjną. Wszystko to jest dyskutowane przez literaturę i to jest dyskutowane przez literaturę w taki nietypowy sposób, to znaczy bardzo ważnym medium jest poezja. Poezja często pełni taką publicystyczną rolę. Jeżeli chodzi o prozę, to ona zwykle z pełnym opóźnieniem się do tego wszystkiego odnosi, również ze względu na to, że wymaga więcej czasu, że bardziej podlega cenzurze i właściwie możemy powiedzieć, że to się do tej pory utrzymało. Ta poezja zresztą w tej chwili krąży często w takiej postaci internetowej, przez różne media społecznościowe, więc ona się rozchodzi momentalnie, bardzo szybko dochodzi do swoich odbiorców. To są w ogóle ciekawe zjawiska, bo to są takie dosyć nowe zjawiska, taka wspólnota czytelnicza, która się gdzieś rodzi gdzie indziej, w innych przestrzeniach, tak, niż takie fizyczne. Natomiast jeżeli chodzi o, było wiele wierszy protestacyjnych przy okazji protestów właśnie różnych. My między innymi z panią profesor Probety tłumaczyłyśmy taką poezję kobiecą, w tej chwili jest przygotowywana do wydania. I to powstaje, i tego rodzaju poezja oczywiście powstaje teraz również, przy czym ze względu na to, że internet w Iranie praktycznie nie działa, no to ona przede wszystkim to, co do nas dociera, to jest ta poezja, którą tworzy diaspora. Więc już w tej chwili tych wierszy powstało ileś, one sobie w internecie krążą. Natomiast jeżeli chodzi o tą literaturę, o beletrystykę, to ona z opóźnieniem troszkę to wszystko odnotowuje. I w Iranie odnotowuje to z dużymi trudnościami, to znaczy podlega cenzurze prewencyjnej i bardzo często zmuszona jest w związku z tym odnosić się do wydarzeń bieżących w taki zawoalowany sposób za pomocą umowy ezopowej albo przenosząc wydarzenia w jakiś inny okres historyczny. Na przykład w ostatnim czasie w Iranie takim miejscem, taką przestrzenią historyczną, w której można pośrednio mówić o tym, co się dzieje współcześnie, są lata 80. Bo to już jest taki czas, który można nawet trochę krytykować, można zauważać pewne wypaczenia i często twórcy tutaj piszą w ten sposób, że dają tylko takie lekkie odniesienia, takie puszczają oko perskie do swojego czytelnika, żeby pokazać, o jakim okresie mówią. Natomiast posługują się tymi analogiami z okresów wcześniejszych. W tej literaturze się dzieje dużo, dzieje się ciekawie. Ona potrafi być, na przykład jeśli chodzi o tę poezję, bardzo taka przejmująca, bardzo głęboko taka inna w wyrazie, to znaczy dla odbiorcy zachodniego, to znaczy na przykład bardzo angażuje cielesność, jest taka bardzo silnie w różnych wymiarach, to znaczy łącząc jakby różne wymiary tej cielesności, zarówno takie cierpienia fizycznego, tak, krwi, bólu, takiego cierpienia wspólnego, z takim cierpieniem indywidualnym, ale również innymi takimi zmysłowymi odczuciami. Także jest bardzo ciekawa w sztuce, właściwie to, co się dzieje, jakby sztuka, już kończę, bo pewnie nie o tym głównie Państwo przyszli powiedzieć, ale sztuka trochę również ze względu na cenzurę, również ze względu na to, że poszukuje takich przestrzeni, żeby rzeczywiście do ludzi przemawiać. Ona wychodzi często poza galerię, wychodzi poza te przestrzenie muzealne, te tradycyjne przestrzenie i obejmuje przestrzenie miejskie, jakieś postindustrialne, tam się odbywają, wokół tego się też toczy życie, tam się odbywają wernisaże, ludzie się spotykają, dyskutują to są, często ma to formę happeningu, tylko jakiegoś chwilowego pokazania czegoś, wykorzystania jakiegoś budynku, żeby coś pokazać na przykład, grania jakimiś kontrastami. Także w takim wymiarze myślę, że to jest u nas nieznane, a bardzo dużo się rzeczywiście w Iranie dzieje i oddaje to ferment intelektualny, który od wielu lat w tym kraju bardzo istotnie ma miejsce, powodując również tworzenie się społeczeństwa obywatelskiego, tego społeczeństwa, które nie jest już dzisiaj skłonne dalej znosić propagandowej wizji Republiki Islamskiej.
Jeśli można, to ja bym tutaj przeskoczyła trochę od tradycji literackiej do współczesności, do tego, co się dzieje teraz, dlatego że zastanawiałam się, jak to się dzieje, że dziś w Iranie nagle, właściwie w sposób taki dość nieoczekiwany, niesłychaną popularność zdobył następca tronu Reza Pahlavi junior, znaczy już nie junior, ale prawda, syn ostatniego szacha, który wyjechał z Iranu jeszcze przed rewolucją jako nastolatek do Ameryki na studia. Właściwie jako dorosły człowiek nigdy tam nie był, nie zna tego kraju. Przez te 40 lat, prawda, z hakiem, blisko 50, właściwie nie brał udziału w życiu politycznym, w żaden sposób nie angażował się w każdym razie jakoś spektakularnie w to, co się dzieje w Iranie i nagle wyskoczył na takiego bardzo popularnego przywódcę, może w braku innych postaci. Młodzi Irańczycy się odwołują do haseł właśnie, można powiedzieć, i symboliki dynastii pahlawijskiej. To jest rzecz, która oczywiście nie jest prawdopodobnie wyłącznie zjawiskiem spontanicznym. Tam jest dużo różnych jakichś troli internetowych, które to napędzają, ale to chwyta. I ja się zastanawiałam nad takim motywem, można powiedzieć, literacko-religijno-historycznym, który w literaturze perskiej, ale też w ruchach różnych religijnych, kontestacyjnych, nie tylko różnych jakichś nurtów nieformalnych, ale oczywiście też na przykład to było w zoroastryzmie i w islamie szyickim istnieje, mianowicie oczekiwanie na ukrytego zbawcę, prawda? Różnego pokroju, bo to może być postać religijna, ukryty imam XII, który się objawi, czy też w zoroastryzmie Saosjan, syn Zaratusztry, który się wyłoni z jeziora Hamun. Może to być też ukryty władca, Bahram Warczawant, który przyjedzie z Indii i pobije muzułmanów, prawda? Czy cały szereg różnych postaci w różnych ruchach takich religijno-rewolucyjnych, które w trakcie historii Iranu się pojawiały. Takie postaci istniały, prawda, wyimaginowane bardziej czy mniej. I ta wiara jest niesłychanie gdzieś tam głęboko zakorzeniona. Też motyw ten pojawia się w literaturze przedrewolucyjnej. On był bardzo żywy. Niekiedy też w różne sposoby kwestionowany. Motyw konia wyprowadzanego pod bramę miasta w oczekiwaniu na oczekiwania ukrytego władcę, czy też zbawiciela, który wsiądzie na niego i przyjedzie, wjedzie triumfalnie do miasta, pojawia się w różnych odmianach w literaturze współczesnej. Więc ja myślę, że tutaj związki takie podskórne polityki z literaturą funkcjonują w takiej głębokiej mentalności irańskiej.
Ja tylko pozwolę sobie, bo tu się pojawiło też takie pytanie na czacie, bo mówimy trochę o takiej literaturze wysokiej, takiej, padło określenie trochę bańce intelektualnej czy artystycznej. A jak to wygląda w przypadku prowincji? Karolino, możesz to jakoś skomentować?
To znaczy, nie mówimy w Iranie w takich kategoriach o literaturze wysokiej. Myślę, że też internet tym bardziej to jeszcze gdzieś tam, może nie tyle, że to zdemokratyzował, tylko tą demokratyczną kulturę dostarczył, pokazał chętnym do jej oglądania. Nie, w Iranie komentowanie poprzez poezję, pisanie poezji to jest absolutnie taka tradycyjna forma praktykowana nawet przez, dawniej często przez ludzi, którzy w ogóle nie umieli pisać. Więc w Iranie się nie mówi o pisaniu poezji, w Iranie się mówi poezję. Sher goftan.
Śpiewa.
Albo śpiewa, tak, ale w każdym razie jest to ewidentnie forma ustna, a nie forma pisana. I te wiersze, o których mówiłam, bo to może jest taka najbardziej oczywista sprawa, chociaż w internecie krąży też na przykład bardzo dużo opowiadań pisanych przez ludzi, czy jakichś wspomnień, czy na przykład jest coś takiego, co się nazywa resztę tweet, czyli łańcuch tweetów, tak, na ten sam temat. To są często jakieś wspominkowe takie rzeczy. Więc to absolutnie nie jest jakieś bankowe, jakieś tylko przez intelektualistów opanowane, tylko znacznie szersze jest to zjawisko.
Dziękuję. Asiu, chciałabyś coś jeszcze dorzucić tutaj?
Okay, I will be very brief because I am from Kurdish studies section, so it is a bit different and I cannot go into many details. Kurdish people live in northwestern Iran and this Iranian Kurdistan, or Rosh Halat as they call it, eastern part of Kurdistan. And of course, they create literature and art in their language. And in Hatami times, they were unable to publish in Kurdish, even if this was censored, and still was censored in the last years. But this literary world flourished, and it was very important space to build an alternative vision to this Iranian Islamic Republic and also Shah state that brought memories about the Kurdistan Republic in Mahabad, which was the political entity established 45-46 that claimed autonomy within Iran and not independence, to stress it to highlight it, because people believe that Kurdish want to separate from Iran, but they actually never wanted. So Mahabad Republic was also about autonomy, and these events, for example, they were described, moved to literature, memory related to that, and also critical evaluation of what happened. Also what happened later during the Islamic Revolution. Today I conducted research in Rosh Halat, in Iranian Kurdistan, on the eve of Xinjiang Azadi uprising in July 2022 among Kurdish women, and it was very important to see that these women I interviewed, they were artists and activists and doing art, taking pictures, writing often help them to find their way to be active, to be in public spaces, to push the borders of this very gendered regime. So these spaces of art and activism very much overlap, of course, and they are intertwined and they inspire each other. So, and finally, if you want to have some insight, I would like to invite you. There is still on the 5th floor, there's still the exhibition by Ibrahim Alipur, who won the World Press Photo last year about Kurdish woman who teaches Kurdish in Iranian Kurdistan. I'm now in touch with Ibrahim. He's in Bane and telling me that the situation is very bad because these Kurdish cities are also heavily bombed. So now what I have in my head is the worry about all the people, all my writers, activists, and I think also my colleagues share that, what happens with them. And I think that actually, I'm not sure if now there is a space for art. Maybe there will be later, but at the moment I think everything was undermined and people are simply struggling to survive. Bardzo krótko po polsku, kurdyjska literatura w Iranie powstawała od wielu lat, od mniej więcej lat klasyczna jeszcze od XV wieku, współczesna od lat 50., 60. i oczywiście zawsze była uwikłana politycznie. Wiązało się to z wydarzeniami sprzeciwu wobec państwa irańskiego, czy to w wydaniu szacha, czy ajatollahów, kultywowaniu pamięci o ważnych wydarzeniach jak Republika Mahabadzka, która pragnęła autonomii w ramach Iranu, podkreślam, autonomii, to ważne. Robiąc badania w Iranie, w Kurdystanie irańskim w 2022 roku przed powstaniem Zinjana Azadi, wśród kobiet kurdyjskich zwracałam uwagę na to, że dla wielu z nich te przestrzenie sztuki i aktywizmu bardzo się przenikają i fakt robienia sztuki bardzo pomaga im w emancypacji, w walczeniu o te przestrzenie nowe, publiczne, świata bardzo zmaskulinizowanego. Więc oczywiście ten element sztuki, literatury dla Kurdów jest kluczowy, mało o nim wiadomo, ale jest bardzo ważny. I chciałam Państwa zaprosić, można zobaczyć jego fragment tutaj w pięknej wystawie o Kurdyjce, która uczy kurdyjskiego w Kurdystanie irańskim na 5. piętrze budynku B Ibrahima Alipura, z którym dzisiaj jestem w kontakcie i też przeżywam trudną sytuację, która się tam dzieje. Właściwie myślę tylko o tych spadających na wszystkich bombach. Dziękuję.
Właściwie ja chciałem Ci jeszcze, Asiu, pociągnąć jeden wątek w trochę innym kontekście, mianowicie w całym tym szumie informacyjnym pojawiły się wzmianki o tym, że Donald Trump i Amerykanie próbują wywrzeć na Kurdów irackich, jeśli dobrze pamiętam, wpływy czy nacisk, by włączyli się do tej wojny. Czy to są już potwierdzone fakty? Czy jesteś w jakimś stanie?
There are no facts. There is only fiction of Mr. Trump and Mr. Netanyahu. And this is full fiction movie. So all Kurds from all Kurdish parties within Iran, there are 7 Kurdish parties in Iran today, and outside Iran, mainly Iraqi Kurdistan, they denied any participation in that war. They all declared that this is not our war, and we are not going to take part in that as any proxy.
Mhm.
So, 6 of these Kurdish parties in Iran, they made an agreement of collaboration, but the aim is to protect people within Rosh Halat, both from American and Israeli bombs and from Islamic State soldiers, because anything may happen. The situation is very difficult. These bombardments are addressed to different posts of Pasdaran of army, but actually they are within cities, so all these cities are bombarded, and soldiers and police and Pasdaran, they moved from there, so they are actually moving or living outside in schools, in mosques, outside the city, so these bombardments doesn't hit them at all. And in many places people left cities, like in Bana, in some other places, because it's impossible to live there now. So I don't believe really that in such circumstances anyone would like to support these people hitting Kurdish people with bombs, because it doesn't make any sense to them. But of course, Kurdish people, they want decentralized democratic Iran. They want to be political subjects within Iran, and they will demand it as they demanded in the past. So they are prepared, but their idea is maybe to follow the scenario that may develop similar to Syria, that weak regime will withdraw, and actually Kurdistan Party of Iran, Kurdistan Democratic Party of Iran, they called police soldiers to go home, to go home, and Pezhak called Kurdish people to organize themselves. But it doesn't mean to uprise. Kurdish people have enough in their story that they struggle. Now they are waiting what will happen. And their postulates are clear. We want decentralized democratic Iran. We don't want to separate from Iran, but we want another system. And this is very important to understand that it is not separatism. It is to have the rights in their locality. So that is the situation, and I don't believe in any proxy and any American being able to use the Kurds, because the Kurds witnessed also what happened in Syria a few weeks ago, that how Americans abandoned them, how they offered, how this Tombar Act offer a very stupid agreement between Shara and Kurds actually abandoned that agreement, that idea, and negotiated much better agreement with Shara themselves. So Americans are useless for them. They don't know the region, and there is no hope they will support them, especially Trump administration. So that's the situation. Sytuacja jest skomplikowana. Kurdowie są bombardowani przez amerykańsko-izraelski najazd i to ich przede wszystkim dotyka teraz. I to nie jest sytuacja, w której mogliby chcieć wspierać tych, którzy zrzucają na nich bomby. Bomby są zrzucane na kurdyjskie miasta dlatego, że tam stacjonuje irańska armia, ale ta irańska armia tam już nie stacjonuje, bo jeździ, bo koczuje na zewnątrz, wyprowadza się poza miasta, więc te bombardowania nie mają sensu w danym momencie, bo nie trafiają celu. Natomiast jest pewien chaos, jest 7 kurdyjskich partii, wszystkie mają militarne skrzydła, one to wszystko obserwują. Natomiast nie ma żadnego wezwania do powstania. Było wezwanie KDPI do żołnierzy irańskich, żeby poszli do domu. Zostawili swoje funkcje i pojechali do domu, i do kurdyjskiego społeczeństwa, żeby się organizować w samoobronie. I to jest tylko tyle. Natomiast przyjęli postawę wyczekującą. Podobnież liderzy kurdyjscy w Iraku zdementowali radykalnie i Barzani, i Talabani jakąkolwiek możliwość udziału w tej wojnie wojsk Kurdów, peszmergów z Iraku.
Dzięki, bo to wydaje mi się dosyć ważne, że my jesteśmy w takim natłoku informacji i wyłapywanie tych faktów i odsiewanie faktów od fake newsów jest dosyć trudne. Karina, chciałaś coś tutaj dodać?
Tak, adwokat. Bo chciałam, może tak, czy ktoś z Państwa nie rozumie po angielsku i chce, żeby mówić po polsku? Nikt się nie zgłasza. Okay, so maybe we'll just switch to English, although my English is awful, excuse me. But it will make it quicker probably. I just watched Iranian television today, and in informations they said that Goruhakho, it means little groups of Kurds from Iraq, they entered Iranian Kurdistan, and the Islamic Peshmergas, in English, is it? What do you say?
Yes.
Okay. Peshmerga. They are supporting the Iranian state, and they act against these little groups. One of the parties that is actually producing disinformation about Kurds and trying to support this thesis that actually Kurds are very dangerous, and so are the other minorities, and they are just looking for a chance to tear Iran apart. It is absolutely Islamic propaganda, Iranian propaganda, Islamic regime propaganda, but of course it is also a concern of many Iranians because they have been feeded this for many years, and repeatedly they heard that if we allow too much democracy to these groups, they will just produce another state, and there will be nothing left from Iran. So this is really not the case in Kurdistan. It is not the case in Iranian Azerbaijan, and it is not the case, at least at the moment, in Iranian Baluchistan, which are the largest provinces inhabited by minorities. And another very important thing is that we say minorities, and what we have in mind in Poland is like, I don't know, 2%, 10% of people, but in Iran it's actually more than 50%. There are no good studies about that at the moment, but some studies estimated as much as even 70% of the population, but at least more than 50%, and the rest are Persians. And although both under Pahlavi regime and under Islamic regime, this identity was constructed around a single nation state. It is a conception that has been targeted by many Iranians, Iranians of different provenances, for example, Kurds. Really, it is not like the only source of their identity, their state identity, their integration is just one language and one there's one flag. How is it called in Iran? Yek parcham va yek zabon. And it's really for many people right now. It's not the clue anymore, and it was very important in the 2022 movement. Xinjiang Azadi, or in Persian, it was adapted from Kurdish, and it was adapted with a tradition of struggle, especially women's struggle in different parts of Kurdistan, and it was brought into Iran, adopted as also named Zan Zendegi Azadi, and it was also a part of movement of solidarity and movement of understanding that actually the one politic that Islamic Republic has been realizing for many years is dividing people, just turning people against one another, groups against one another. So you should be afraid of Kurds, you should be afraid of Baluchis, you should be afraid of whatever, different political groups or different religious groups. Which is less and less actually to the liking of many Iranians right now.
Let me add one thing, because it is not simply the propaganda of Islamic Republic promoting this Kurdish engagement. The same happens with Israeli propaganda. Actually, they work hand in hand. Not for the first time, and it was there were many cases reported by some Israeli journalists that Kurds started some military actions, for example, in Mariwan, but it was all fake, not confirmed by any Kurdish source, and. Also, it is important to stress that Kurds will no way support the son of the Shah, Reza Pahlavi. What they declared very long ago, already Abdullah Rahman Qasimlu, the famous leader of Kurdistan Democratic Party, assassinated by the Islamic Republic in the 80s. He was declaring that we don't want any Shah to rule Iran, we don't see any future. And now it is very visible, especially that the Shah is very anti-Kurdish, in fact. He said that this unity of Kurdish parties is a danger to Iran. So he doesn't treat them as any partner to talk, but the similar problem also has the leftist Iranian left, and I spent all day discussing with a guy who on Facebook whom I really admire on one hand, but they also see now only one Kurdish fraction within Communist Iranian Party as the reliable and reasonable fraction, not becoming American proxy. But other Kurdish parties, they also don't want to be American proxy, but we must realize that the situation is very unpredictable. One provocation may cause some fight. So, and you cannot you cannot think to support Kurds and tell that I'm supporting only Kurdistan fraction of Iranian communists, and all these 6 parties that came together and are huge majority that the Kurds support, we are not supporting. This is the mistake, and the problem is here again this politicized issue of decentralization, that these Kurds they call for decentralization, and this is something new and difficult for many Iranians to think about, but I think it should be thought about and analyzed as a possibility, because otherwise they will push against these Kurdish groups, and we need dialogue there and to know each other better, actually, because there are no good channels of these dialogues also on this opposition side. But what is also important to mention that, for example, Baluchis for a decade, I think, when I went to Kurdistan twice, in 2017 and 2022, I've heard about Kurds talking about Baluchis, and Baluchis actually joined these, some, not all, but BLA, they joined this Kurdish union of parties, and they recognize it as an important initiative now in this mess in Iran to join them. So it is not only Kurds now in this union of minorities, even though they don't think about themselves as minorities within their localities. And it is also something we should be seeing.
Thank you. And I wanted to ask you, because, Professor, do you want to make any
Maybe not yet.
Okay, so but at least I have two different questions. First of all, refers to the polarization of society. As Karina, you mentioned that for 27 years, the Iranian society has been polarized. دو قطب سخن, yes, different groups against each other. So my main idea is nowadays either able to somehow unified against, the common dushman, enemy in this case, or maybe there is. And what about any future for Iranian society after the perhaps collapse of the system?
So perhaps I think that this is probably interesting for those who know more about Iran, but probably those that maybe just got interested get a little bit confused that Iran has just been attacked, and we are actually not talking about how bad the war is, but we are talking about the problems, the internal problems is actually a large problem, a large part of our conversation. And what must be said here very firmly is that Iran is in a very special situation right now. It wasn't like that even 3 months ago. But 2 months ago, there were large protests in the country, the largest protests since the Islamic Revolution, and people really came out to the streets to protest. Most of them peacefully. And those crowds were attacked from a very close distance, and many thousand people, at least 7,000 people. That is what could be confirmed with their names, but probably much more than that, judging by the relations of witnesses and by the relations about the storage of dead bodies that got to us, both by pictures and by just stories about that. So as it was a revolutionary state, and for many years Iranian, even those that were opposing the regime, that had been criticizing the regime, they were still ready to open to reforms, and they were thinking, well, the revolution is never perfect, it takes time. We've been through the war in the 80s, the war with Iraq, so let us get some time, and let us get to this democracy step by step, because we actually have to learn. Then protests exaggerated, and there were more and more protests, like in large waves of protests within last years, and they were all targeted. But this last one was a shock. I mean, no legitimization has left for the state, and it is probably the first time that we can firmly say, I mean, at least I can take responsibility for that majority of Iranians are no longer interested in reforming the system, because they were, no one was talking to them. There is a large crisis in the country. It's not just based on human rights. I mean, human rights, you can say, but it's a large economic problem as well. Iran, that possesses such large, possesses gas, possesses oil, is not able to get the electricity for its people. The electricity is like getting switched off for a few hours. And it's got a large problem with water. It's got a large problem with natural resources. It's got a large problem with actually everything. I mean, the prices, they just, fly like from one day to another. And the price of rial, the Iranian money just gets like sometimes 1/3 less in one day. So this is really a great pressure, and it is partly due to the sanctions, but only partly due to that. It is because of mismanagement that has been used in this country for many, many years, and the corruption of the elites. So when this attack happened, actually many Iranians were happy that someone is actually coming to their aid. Although we know very well that no one was actually coming to their aid, because there was not a mention about human rights during negotiations. America was never interested actually in targeting that, but some just speeches of President Trump. But still, it is like their only chance. So it is a tragic situation because, of course, they realize this. Not Americans and not Israelis care for Iranian people or democracy in Iran. Especially, one cannot really assume that Israelis would be interested in democracy and stable country in that place at all. But still, it's how it works now. And I absolutely forgot what you asked about.
I think that in such heat debate, we always can easily lose the main idea, the core of my question. No worries, but it was still very interesting. Yeah, I wanted to ask you about the polarization of the society and eventual problems in the future.
So under this situation, of course, the society is very much polarized. Islamic Republic has been dividing its resources between a large group of people, not only administration, but also people sometimes loosely connected to Pasdaran, to the IRGC, and a large network of business connection that is actually working like that and getting contracts and getting better chances and so on. So, of course, there are people supporting the government because of that. There are people supporting the government because they believe that they are so lonely in the world, and actually no one really cares about Iranians getting to what they want and to actually govern their own country. But at least Islamic Republic is constructed on their culture. So for many people, it is, they believe, yes, there are so many mistakes, but still, let's wait. Still, there are this kind of people, less right now, but they are also there. And many intellectualists, for example, many university professors, for example. But those that are opposed to the state have been encountered, as I said, with great severity, and we actually don't have organized opposition in Iran right now, because each time an important oppositional figure arises, it's targeted by this propaganda also, trying to tell everyone that actually this person is has some links to the government and don't believe it, or whatever. And of course they are being jailed, they are being executed, they are being forced to leave the country, and once they left the country, they are being told to keep calm and keep quiet because you are no longer in Iran, so you don't have a right to say anything about the country situation. So it's a tragic situation, and of course diaspora, which is very large, is at least 6 million people and probably more in the world. You could have seen large demonstrations in Berlin, in Toronto, in the States, in Los Angeles. It was like 350,000 people in one demonstration, so it's really, really large. So diaspora, as any diaspora, some of them are not very much connected with the country anymore. I mean, they are emotionally, but they don't really understand what is going on because they have been out the country, as Professor said, like the son of the last Shah, Reza Pahlavi, who has actually no idea about, he could not. He's been outside for 50 years, okay? But of course, many of those people are only also strongly interested in Iranian problems. And so in this very difficult situation and with this stress, coming from different places, with this propaganda held by many different sources, and for example, the monarchists are also having their own propaganda and are trying to, which is partly due to their best intentions. I mean, they believe that there is a necessity of one authority, as Professor said, that would change this country. That would organize this country, and so who better than the prince who's got some support, and his support has been, of course, growing, and also his media have been important in this. Manuto, the television selling nostalgia to Iranian inside and outside the country, reminding them how a mighty country they used to be during the Shah's period. Of course, there are monarchists, they are strong, but there are also many people who support the prince as a leader for a period of change, to enable the elections, the free elections, and to enable the change of the regime. So what I would like to strongly underline here, because I can see I have friends lying in here. I know it is funny for many Iranian studies scholars and students, but I would like to strongly underline that he has support in the country, and it is because, of course, partly because of absolute lack of different choices. So people actually called for him in the streets. They called for him in the streets 2 months ago, and in later protests that were organized since that. And many see him as the only solution. And many also say, even if he was installed by United States, and if Iran was supposed to be dependent on the States, it's still okay, because the situation is so terrible right now that it's unimaginable. And nothing worse could happen to us. So what? We will deal with another regime. At least the regime will not be so strong, strongly, strong, and will not have such religious support, because it's also important for some people. This much lesser group, but still for some people, this a regime is based on religion, and so it's how they say by their own. They say it's regime nizam muqaddas. So it's the sand regime. It's a sand system. So you cannot touch it, of course. Just going to an end, sorry. If you ask about how it affects the future, of course, we know very little about the future. We don't know how long is the war going to take.
4 weeks. It was officially announced that it will take 4 weeks.
Among other things.
Even more.
Among other things.
Among other things, yes.
Yes, so it's. I really wouldn't be so surprised if it stopped tomorrow for a reason. But also probably it can last like for months or maybe
for
more
years.
or for years. I mean, this operation, we don't have wars anymore. We have operations, Probably the last war was the war on, yes, and how Reza Pahlavi called it, humanitarian aid.
Humanitarian aid, okay.
Yes. There are really many things that we do not know. But what we do know is that we have civil society in Iran. We have, like Yasha said about the Kurds, we have this really grown thought about how the country should be governed, how the society should be constructed, and how they should find a new identity in many places in Iran. But the problem is that they don't have this peace, this freedom to just sit down and talk about it and have these free elections. If there were free elections right now in Iran, I am really ready to give my hand for that. Like we said in Polish, that the Islamic Republic would lose if free elections were to be held. But of course, these divisions, people whose close ones, whose dear ones had been killed, had been targeted, had been ridiculed for many, many, many years. They, of course, they are used to being very cautious towards one another, and there is much hostility between them. And this will not just disappear, so it is very, very important how they go on with that and how they try to construct very bold, which also Josia mentioned, of course, coalitions and tables to talk. So it's really, there are many dangers.
I want to draw your attention to one thing. We cannot do anything now to help these people survive these bombs. We cannot. But what we can do, really, is to think about the future and help think about the future and make some space for that. Because what I observe, and it is very dangerous, that it is not, of course, related only to Iran, everywhere. But people live in bubbles. My Kurds on Facebook, they live in their own bubble. Iranian left living in their own bubble. No connection, and they tell these stories to themselves. So if this idea of the future is important, it must start now. This discussion bringing people together, and they have problem to come together. They really have, because there is a huge lack of trust in between these people, and they are sure that the other side will not listen to them. And this is precisely where we can be active and try to bring them together. What I'm working now on Facebook, and with Kurdish nationalists, I'm using the Iranian left or even Islamic Republic language. With Iranian communists today, I pose like almost Kurdish nationalists. So, because they do not overlap, they do not, and even if they see each other, they are sometimes scared to make this, because you need to be ready to struggle there. And this is something we really need, and to help people come together, at least those that are able to listen to each other and talk to each other. And there are such people. And this is precisely how we can help, and how we can help organize these spaces and open to this space for such discussion, because we very much need it. At least now only just these people to listen to each other, because I know that from today's discussion with this Iranian leftist, I know what he doesn't get there from, or what he thinks differently, and I know these Kurdish people, they say it differently. So it is not that we know what they want, absolutely not. But sometimes, because we are from outside, we listen to some stories different, and they tell us different stories, and to each other they don't tell these stories. So there is something we can do. And this is important, and everyone can do it actually, because there are different situations in our lives that we meet, discuss, and to think about it. Just not to be always, yes, great, everything is great. Sometimes to be a bit more provocative. I know it's difficult, but we can do it. It's doable. And this is how democracy is being built. Because what we lost in this populism, which is global, is this ability to talk and listen to each other. Because in Facebook, we also live in bubbles. That's the problem, but also hope. I believe in that. I believe that it is possible.
Well, I think it's wonderful what you propose, but I'm a bit skeptical about interfering into the others' politics, because I remember the 80s and the Afghan War, Soviet-Afghan War, when there was a lot of good people in Europe, for instance, who were trying to connect together different opposition parties of Afghanistan, and it didn't work.
Because it not always work, but there are so many spaces where we can do it, and internet, online, it gives us
Maybe
possibilities.
because there was no internet then. So I wish you success.
But I must
But,
say,
well, about the lack of organized opposition in Iran, because it is what we hear very often, and some people are even, some commentators are blaming the Iranians for not having organized prepared some alternatives inside Iran and organized some power which would take over after the collapse of the Islamic Republic. But I think, the Iranians have a capacity of protesting and know the techniques and methods of protesting, very well experienced, at least since the end of the 19th century, since the constitutional movement and afterwards. And also they have a very long historical tradition of such grassroots organizing themselves. And you can see it now also, how people are trying to be organized to do something, to make efforts in various fields, whether it's politics or help to some discriminated people, or for instance in the ecological movements, in many fields, but also the governments, since ever, I think, since the Darius the Great, maybe, are experienced in toppling such, annihilating such movements or taking them into control. So it is a sort of internal struggle which is going on between the society and the ruling powers, and now we can see it's in a level of having no opposition and non-existence of any decided organized movement, unless we take into consideration the reformists inside the system, who were not, they are not popular about the people anymore. They have proved they cannot transform the system from inside. So now I think we'll be looking, we'll be observing some developments going towards new proposals, new possibilities, but still it depends on the development of the war, what will happen, and whether the Islamic Republic will survive or not.
Okay, so we've been talking for 1 hour. I think it's enough. Let's have some comments or questions from the audience. Okay, so if there are any questions, comments, yes, please.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
can you introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Andre. Thank you very much. Very interesting. I'm from another field, political science. Researching here at the Agricultural University. Thank you very much for an interesting conversation, and also thank you for saying things in English. In the beginning, I was a bit worried if I wouldn't be able to understand anything of this. But I think you say very I have to be very short, but I think you say some things that are very interesting that I agree with, but I also have some remarks that I think are very problematic of what you're saying, and unfortunately they're very Eurocentric understanding of some things regarding Iran. First of all, let me start with what I think makes sense. What you say regarding Kurdish people, there is no doubt that this is a very difficult situation. Kurdish people have been used as pawns for a very long time, especially from the United States of America. And understanding things from the human side is very important, because they have been abused for every time. So this is first thing I agree with. I have some remark. And for what you say, you are also, I think, right about this, that Pahlavi has support in Iran. Because the situation now, Iranians for 47 years have given everything a chance. If in the beginning, during the revolution in Iran, Iran became a democracy, nobody would talk about Pahlavi today. Nobody would look at this if the revolution was successful. So this is very important to understand from a human point of view of the choice of Iran, because politics is about choice. Status quo is impossible. This regime cannot answer its people in any aspect, and it cannot be reformed, because we have radical Islamists occupying this who are not ordinary Muslims. They're radical. They're Islamists, not just Muslims, but from a political point of view, they cannot be reformed. So the choice of Pahlavi makes very much sense, because anybody in Iran do not trust anybody else. Then I saw some people laughing maybe a bit of the thing that Pahlavi has been abroad for 47 years. I think like we can think in a positive way. He has 47 years experience in democracy, something that
He
is.
doesn't look.
Yeah, no, I'm not sure about this, because it depends on all the situation of what we are dealing with, and then I mean we have one people, Pahlavi himself, but also people around him. It's true that things could be more democratic, but again, as I said, we have to compare with status quo. Then you mentioned something with Kurds. I think when you talk about a group, it's very important to be a bit more in the narrative, to take other narratives into account. I don't know if you're aware of, in January, people in Sakres, Kermanshah, and Sanandaj chanted Javid Shah, and in آخرین نبرد پهلوی برمیگرده. So this is the final battle, and Pahlavi will return. This is even some Kurds saying this in Kermanshah. I refer to Instagram.
Maybe in Kermanshah, but
Yes.
I really doubt about other cities.
No, I will, yes, but no.
Tiny minority.
I'm not sure if it's a minority. It's first of all difficult in Iran to make a completely factual statement, because you cannot state that I am pro this, which is against the government. But if there are many patriotic Kurds of Iran, among other Mitra Jashni, more than almost 200,000 followers on Instagram, who are advocating for Pahlavi, I think it's very important to understand that among Kurds in
For
Iran,
sure, Kurds in Khorasan, because there are also Kurds in Khorasan, and they indeed support Shah.
there are even
I'm
people
sure
in
about
Kermanshah,
this.
and even we have footage from Sakis and Sanandaj, people chanting this.
There are some people, but have you been there in the cities?
And in Sakis and Kermanshah, I've not been unfortunate. Right now, it's not in. We're in a war. Of course, I'm not there. I'm in Krakow, but and I will not go. I will not definitely not invite anybody to go to Iran right now. But the point is that that regarding separatism, there are people from who have different points. And then also the other point that I think that can be a bit problematic from maybe it might be a bit a Eurocentric view regarding the question of ethnicity, minority, and majority, because how do we define the concept of minority? Is it just in terms of quantity of people, like we say, here we have, like, let's say 50 million people, and then we just have 5 million. For example, I'm mixed. I'm not a Persian, but I'm mixed Gilaki. I have a part of me is Azeri, and I am partly Kurdish. So I'm mixed of different ethnicities. I do in no circumstances call myself in any way an ethnic minority in Iran, because our nation is very different from the European concept, because Europeans think that nation is based maybe on one ethnicity. Persian language as a lingua franca is not something that is made by Pahlavi. Yaqub Ollais has done this. Before Yaqub Ollais, we had other Iranians with Persian, for example, Nizam Ganjavi, which is of course after Yaqub Ollais, and Azeri from Ganja, who wrote in Persian. So this we have a different, I think, perspective on nation, which is important to understand. And the history of centralization in Iran, Iran for at least 2005.
What is the question?
No, it's their remarks, because they're critical remarks. Because for the question of, for example, you mentioned this coalition of parties, because if you see in this narrative they're writing, they mention self-determination. But in the Iranian context, I think that these people will understand as separatism because of the Persian philosophy of a very centralized state. I don't know if you have, like, you mentioned that you do not consider this as a separation, but many Iranians consider this as a separation.
But what they keep saying that they have right to self-determination, because they have this right, but right is one thing, and the pragmatic reality, what we can achieve, is another thing. And this is precisely where politics starts, because we cannot achieve independence neither in Iraq, neither in Syria, and we actually can build something else, and this is not the time for independence. No one will support that, and they are realistic. And I know all these stories about ethnicity, and I work on the topic for 25 years, and I know your narratives. But please remember that I agree with you, but the Kurdish concept of citizenship is much richer today. For example, if we see how it happened in Rojava, and this philosophy behind these cantons in Rojava and giving some support to other minorities. So it is not to, and also because Kurdish group within themselves, they are so different dialects, religions, everything. So they got used to negotiating these differences, and this is potential precisely because they are in negotiations. So this is some kind of democratic potential they already possess, and this is why I am hopeful. They are not perfect, of course. I'm not idealizing, but they have something very important, and they prove that in Syria now, that they are able to negotiate, to withdraw, to seek compromise. So they are not like head clash people. And in Iran, it is very similar. So it is not just simply to be one Kurdish nation. They have different dialects there, different religion as well. So it is to give some space to these different subjectivities, and that's this idea of radical confederalism is really inspiring them, because I witnessed there were quite many links between Iran and Syria developed at that time of Syria war. So, and it is something that is dynamic, changing. So it is not one nation, as you imagine, ethnicity concept. It is to give voices from below, and they are more open to these days, and they also reformed their concept of Kurdish nationalism because within their group there were so many different voices. So how you want this one nation from Kurds? It doesn't come out from Kurds one united nation.
Okay.
Sorry, just one or two sentences. I actually watched some discussions on a BBC version, which is called
yeah,
Ayatollah BBC by Sams, and in Iran, of course, it's like a representative of all evil. So being attacked from all the parties, they sometimes get interested. Interesting, and there are many Iranians. I mean, not Kurds, but not Kurds Iranians, but other Iranians talking about learning from Kurds because they have been experiencing these democratic issues for so many years right now, and they were. It can be actually supportive for Iran. And another I will not talk about it, but I just wanted to mention that there is a great difference between lingua franca in a traditional passionate society and one language for the nation state, which is actually oppressive, and it's a great difference. So we could talk 2 hours about that.
Okay, thank you. Pani Marcinie, so the floor is yours.
Welcome everybody. My name is Marcin Chrobak and I am graduate of the Iranian studies here. I have 2 questions I would like to ask, especially to Professor Krasnowolska, if possible. First of all, but feel free also to add something. First question is, how is it possible that during 45 years of existing the Islamic Republic in Iran, there was any movement, any popular mass movement in Iran or in the emigration who would be able to create a platform like it was in Poland, Solidarność, let's say, to propose, to even try to propose any program, any alternative to the order of the Islamic Republic. How is that possible if we know that there are strong roots among Iranians for revolting and etc. That is one question. And the second one is if that is possible, that Iranian people under the bombing of strikes conducted by the Americans and Israel will stand united together they will unite with the government in order to defend themselves or their independence.
Well, as for your first question, you should remember that there is a tremendous difference between the Iranian regime and the communist regime in Poland, which, well, maybe from our point of view was oppressive, but if you compare it, it was really very liberal, and there were no tortures, no death sentences, no flogging. The security services were not as effective as Iranian ones. So it was possible to create a movement, several movements, because there was CORE, the first movement of the intellectuals helping the workers. Then there was Solidarity, there were some other organizations which were harassed, but not in a drastic way. So, and they were helped from abroad also. and there was well, quite a lot of support from the West, from America, from the Pope also, who was Polish. So it was a very good moment for the opposition to organize, and also a helping factor was that the Soviet Union was well, fighting the Afghan war. There was it was in a very bad economic state, so we were just lucky to have this moment for acting and well, uh, changing the regime. But in Iran, I think one thing is the massive repression. Especially, it started. The Islamic Revolution was first not quite Islamic. It was a revolution of all kinds of organization,
Yeah.
from left to right, from the minorities to the majority, and so on. And there was an enormous hope for a change. But then the first decade after the revolution was really terrible. It was a time when the regime was well, eliminating all its previous associates, all the other parties, other movements, a massive repression combined with the Iraqi war. So this was a time when there was no space for other proposals, and then there were such attempts. For instance, well, in the presidency of Khatami, this reformist movement was quite strong. And then, well, it was, of course, it was still this Islamic regime, but with maybe a bit more human face. And then it was a revival of thinking. There was the idea of the civil society was quite well popular and even propagated, and there was a hope for change. But then it collapsed, and I think it was really quite impossible. Maybe if it were Jangalier movement, for instance, I don't know.
Guerrilla.
Really.
But well, but
Guerrilla.
yeah, there were some protests, some armed movements of the tribes, for instance, things which were not very well explored, I think. But I think, well, the Kurdish movement, the Kashkai movement, for several years, they were trying to fight the Islamic Republic, for instance. So there were some attempts, but suppressed.
May I also add one thing? For the green movement,
Yes.
yes, I think it's very important with the civil society
Uh-huh.
of all the espionage the regime makes on its people
Uh-huh.
for repressing every kind of thing. This is also a fact.
But also during the women life freedom movement, they were actually trying to conduct, these negotiations, and there was even this kind of organization created between with some people from within Iran, some human rights defenders, and some from the outside. We must also remember that Iran has, two Peace Prize winners, Nobel Peace Prize winners in the last years. So really, there are people who could be engaged in such works. But unfortunately, at that time, and in 2023, it was unfortunately a very destructive force was Prince Reza Pahlavi, his supporters, actually not him, but some of his supporters that are very but are actually are not democratic at all, as Asha said. And so once they felt that they are an important force, they started, to just push the others aside. So this coalition actually collapsed. But also right now, after this protest 2 months ago, some initiatives were taken in the diaspora to talk it over. And for example, in Paris, there were some meetings and were really interesting because people from different views were meeting. And they also actually talked about the 80s when they used to meet like that, Iranian opposition after who emigrated after the revolution. They were meeting in Paris like that, and then they were targeted by the students supporting the regime, and they will actually even beat and so on. And eventually, those meetings stopped. And right
there
now
was
we're
such an accident in Berlin.
Yes.
You remember?
Yes, so it's all the time the infiltration of also infiltration of Iranian regime within the diaspora is immense, and the pressure, and they are pressing, to the families, and they are and really people are afraid of each other and have this feeling that they are still watching us, even if we are very far apart. And also some of even it's also it got to the killings and so on. So it's not just just words. But hopefully, yes, some of these discussions have came back. But also, the last thing, the diaspora, Polish diaspora, was also very much divided. There were different groups, and they were also they weren't trusting each other and very reluctant to talk, and with very different views of what Poland would be. So probably, the situation. I also what Asha said, that we could provoke these discussions between diaspora, for example. I have a little bit different feeling. I think that we own them empathy. They are in very different, difficult situation. They don't have touch with their dear ones. They cannot influence directly what is going on in their country. We really, it's absolutely not our role to tell them what to do, and they get it like this because they are very emotional right now, and they have a right to be. I mean, anyone would be. So I have this feeling that maybe it is not our place right now, and maybe we should be more supportive of them. Like our neighbors who brought cake for my husband.
It is about how to be with them, and it is very sensitive, I agree, but still there is some space, and this time counts. Time is passing, and I'm not talking that this, I'm not idealizing, but if we came here because probably you also have the feeling that you want to do something, even to come here and listen. And this is a very positive thing, and not idealizing it that we will change and bring and there will be paradise after tomorrow. No, but we have some possibilities to do something, because what happens is that with this politics of above our heads that happening, that we have nothing to say, we are becoming very pessimistic. So the idea is to see some small steps that people can do, because everyone, and this is where democracy is hidden, and this is where the huge crisis of democracy lies nowadays, that people are inactive because they are hopeless and helpless. So that's my point, and not. I'm also. I think I'm not. I think I possess empathy, but also it is important where to talk and find the context to whom you tell what, and how you find way to talk, because I think both things are possible actually.
So,
Okay, so-
yes, I didn't answer your second question about whether it's possible for the Iranians to unite around the flag. I mean, this flag of the
With the government,
Jamhuriya
stand with the
Islami.
government.
Well, I don't think so. I mean, of course, they are now, well, they are between two oppressors, so to say. I mean, both bombing Americans and Israelis and the oppressive regime, which is still in place. So, but I think it's rather a time for when the Iranians are just trying to survive and to see what is going on, waiting for some solutions. So I do not believe they would support the regime, especially as well a part of the society is hoping this war will finish well with the end of the regime. So it's a time of well expectation and some hope.
Mhm.
So,
Okay. Yes, please. You have a question. Excuse me, but
Just speak up.
can you speak a little bit louder?
So, to my question, I know we don't need any more debates in this case, but I wonder, female perspective, is it like how is it different from, let's say, male perspective? And how is it similar and and how much does it actually matter? Because I'm not sure how you would be with like power.
Okay, so you're asking about the male and female perspective, yes?
Like, yeah.
Is there then?
Like gender-based perspective on it.
Oh, I'm sure it's pretty huge, yes? Am I right? That there are two different perspectives? Or maybe I'm
Yes.
wrong.
No, I mean, probably under the bombs, these perspectives get a little bit close of every human being and every creature, actually, living creature. Well, of course, there has been a struggle for women's rights for many years now in Iran, for 150 years probably. It's in last years, finally, their postulates were recognized, and this woman life freedom movement was a very important mentioned today twice. Was a very important movement in this respect because for once actually men stood with women for the women's rights. It's very different from what was going on in Afghanistan, for example. The discourse, dialectics of this movement was very interesting because also it recognized the needs of the other groups, many other groups, and it was a great offspring of actually solidarity. But women had been present to this protest since the constitutional revolution, so from the beginning of the 20th century. And the woman issues, like in many places, they've been repeatedly like pushed. It's not as important as another political problems to be solved. During the Pahlavis, it really took a long time for the position of women to get a little bit better, not perfect, because the law was not bad, but it wasn't actually working in many places, and no one was expected. I mean, the state was not expecting it to work in many places, traditional families and so on. And after the revolution, it got absolutely back to the Sharia and law, and with no respect to the previous changes. But then Iranian women, step by step, they actually opened some space for themselves, and they are present in the society, and they are very active, and feminist thought and actions also in Iran is very important. And also, as Joasia said about Kurdistan, so it's the same. Very often this art and activism are mixed together, and it helps women to get place, to get more space in the society. Recently there were also discussions about pushing the woman back again, with this monarchies trying to show themselves as the most important movement, subjecting women's demands under this more general demands. And there were some conflicts about that, both in Iran and outside. And it seems like a very realistic perspective right now that this women's rights will be pushed aside once again because there is another crisis. In many respects, of course, men and women, I mean, everyone who is not happy with the regime, let's say like that, not to go into details, becomes its victim in a way. But it is still a difference between men and women, because those problems that women get involved into are more maybe every day, and of course they are legally in the worse position. They are subjected to their husband. They cannot, for example, get a passport without husband's permission. They cannot. Their life is worth half of what a man's life is worth. And in the court. And many other things, with hijab, which is such an important issue for us, it's become a symbol for Iranians. But one should see that it is just a part of very larger problem, and more a symbol than an actual issue. Because if you always put it on, you can put it on. You just don't want to anymore, because it means you accept the oppression. So in last month, for example, after the first war, the first attack, this hijab was not really respected in cities anymore, and many women did come without it to the city. No one encountered them. So they have like all the problems that men do, and of course their perspective is more like complicated, and they have their own problems to be hopefully resolved. But probably any religion, any state that wouldn't be a religious state will be a great improvement for women. I could not imagine otherwise.
Yes, please. Yeah, Asha, do you want to add something? Yes.
I wanted to add one thing. I very much believe in this policy of women, because it is what we also refer to. It is really much more full of empathy and bringing different people together. And I witnessed it many times through Kurdish Gender Studies Network and many other places. But I will give you one example of a lady I invited to Krakow, and she's coming and will screen her films. Sharzad Arshadi, who is Iranian from Gilan, but making films about Kurdish women. She's now currently based in Montreal, but she came to Middle East to do films about Kurdish women from different military units. 2 films, beautiful films she has. And when I met her long ago in Iraqi Kurdistan, and later I was her guest in Montreal. But what is most important, I follow her on Facebook, and wherever she mentions that Jinjian Azadi, women, life, freedom, she uses Kurdish. And she doesn't speak Kurdish. knows a bit of Kurdish because she was among Kurds. But she uses that because there is something very important in using it this way. And you can build bridges, emotional bridges to Kurdish people, because it was for the first time that majority borrowed something from minority, a very crucial moment. And Kurdish people, they were proud. But later it was translated into Farsi, into English, and they have a feeling it was stolen. So now to recover from that feeling, because of course it was translated because people used to understand this, but we can use it if we use it this way. And if she uses it this way, she from Iran, of Iranian background, this is something symbolic and very important. I remember where it comes from. And this is very something that is rooted in some kind of intuition, empathy, and a kind of gut feeling that she has, and many men unfortunately don't. So I really believe and trust in this policy of women and coming together of different backgrounds, and we witness it also in Syria, in Rojava, in Danis, in many places, and this is why I think that this gender politics really counts, and there is a huge space for gender politics now within Iran and outside Iran.
Thank you. And yes,
So I'm Michał, and I have a question maybe on a different topic, a topic about methodology of research and of how we can obtain information by ourselves. Like when there are things like, for example, identity-based numbers or polls about opinions or ethnicities. Iran is a country that the information doesn't flow normally because, as you said, the internet doesn't work. What are the ways to make ourselves in the research field, but also in our everyday lives when we want to know what is happening? How can we make ourselves sure that the information that we possess is reliable?
Bardzo mądre pytanie, ale
the floor is yours.
no, it's a
So
wonderful
I think-
question, but quite complicated.
I think it is complicated and complex, but I think there are some leads that we can follow. Like when it comes to statistics, I think, of course, it is difficult to rely only on statistics coming from Iran, definitely. And also from other groups, because they may be manipulated. But if you reach different statistics, you can compare at least. And this is also some kind of knowledge that you can get and be critical. And also, I think that when we, what are our approaches? And to ask ourselves also about these approaches, this is something that I keep telling my students, and how we position ourselves also in that research, and what it enables us to do and what information to obtain. This is also something important that we should reflect on to maybe not to get lost in some kind of one line, one side. So, and there are some sources, for example, when it comes to Kurdish topics. So there are some sources that after a while you learn recognizing as scientific, or there are some think tanks. So you can, we are like a kind of place. University should be such a place, not always is, but to come and verify and to ask. And this is something I sometimes help journalists to reach some sources and not to rely on other sources. For example, Al Jazeera is not a great channel to learn about Kurds.
Yeah,
So-
and Iran.
So you must seek for other, and this is what we also, where is our role, the academics. But of course, we cannot be expert on everything, and sometimes people demand us that we are experts on. For me, they wanted I would be on Arab countries, but I'm not, especially, absolutely not. I denied it many times.
Yeah.
So there are some crazy realities we live through also of selling this knowledge that we should also not get lost
Yeah,
into.
and also the disinformation and a lot of AI clips that I've seen, especially during the
Yes,
people say
Okay, guys, because we are running out of time and at least we have 2 or maybe 3, I suppose, questions. I need to stop here and please, can we have your question, then your, and then your, and we'll jam them together and try to answer them together. Okay, please.
Yeah, just a quick comment, and maybe some will not agree or some do agree. But my name is John. I'm actually Iranian American living here in Krakow, and I have a lot of Iranian friends from within Iran, friends in Europe, friends and family in the U.S. My personal opinion is, and I see the other side as a minority, but at this point, some people talk about, it's a tragedy what's going on, and the oppressors are the regime, and also the bombs falling on this country. But what other choice was there at this point? Because to leave this regime in place would have been a tragedy for the entire world. This regime would never reform itself. This regime was the equivalent of a cancer on not just Iran, but on the entire humanity in this world. They kill their own people. They support terrorists across the world. They kill their dissidents in Europe. They kill people in other countries that don't agree with them. They tried to kidnap a journalist in New York and put her on a boat to Venezuela and fly her back to Tehran. There was a dissident in the UAE. They kidnapped him, brought him back to Tehran, and executed him. They've had no respect for international law or the rules or norms of law for the last 4 or 5 decades. There was no other choice but for them to face war. And there was, surprisingly, this went way better than anyone expected for the Ayatollah to die on the first day after 47 years of saying death to America, death to Israel, death to everything that we don't agree with. And for the entire command structure of this country to dissolve this quickly. So, in my opinion, and maybe this bothers some, because war is not pretty, war is not, it's not a video game. People are going to die, civilians are going to die. School children died on the first day of war. A lot of innocent people will die, but the war didn't start when the U.S. dropped these bombs. The war started decades ago from them killing their own people. Tens of thousands, or 7,000 to upwards of tens of thousands of people died in January from their own government. To think that they wouldn't do this with anyone else in the world, and seeing their behavior, that they're now trying to bomb every Arab country and attack every Arab country and attack everyone they possibly can. So my only comment is, and there's people that disagree and say, oh, if you're Iranian and you support this, block me and delete me and don't ever talk to me again. And that's also a legitimate point of view. So you can't say that there's any illegitimate point of view. But the fact is, I think there's nothing else, that there is no other choice left. This is the equivalent of a Nazi regime of the Middle East that had to go, that has to be attacked, and the only language they understand is force. And besides that, they were going to deceive the world. They have this Islamic principle of taqiyya, where they can lie and fake negotiation their way into getting a nuclear bomb, and then you would have had then a equivalent of North Korea in the Middle East that would have just kept on doing whatever they wanted with the threat of a nuke. So that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Question or comment?
Question and maybe a short comment, another question.
But
Yeah,
please
I know,
keep
I
it
know. I will be quick.
short and sweet.
My name is Marek, and when you were talking earlier, you meant that this is because it is, a very serious and pessimistic situation in the Middle East. And the topic of the debate is also Iran 2026. So I thought, maybe there should also be a question, and maybe it should be the last question because it's kind of optimistic. What opportunity do you see for Iran in this situation? What good could come out of it? And maybe, considering the vision of, let's say, optimistic end, what could be the role of Iran in the future in the world, both culturally and economically? Basically, what could Iran gain, given that there are opportunities for change now, and what would Iran become in the future, basically?
Thank you. And the last question.
Ale
It's
to
more-
było pytanie.
Tak, ale mieliśmy
Yeah,
skończyć.
first of all, we collect all the questions and then you are asking.
Yeah, I just have comments adding a little bit of context that hasn't
Yeah.
been said yet. So I think we've been talking about the influences of like America. I think what's interesting is that so far it hasn't come up that in the early 1950s in 53, the reason the Shah, I forget his name, I just refer to him as like the Shah's kid. But,
Mohammad Reza.
yeah, like this monarchist line is being proposed because before this U.S. and U.K. supported coup in Iran in the early 50s to install the Shah, there was a government that was focused on nationalizing the country's natural resources like the oil and the minerals, and so this was a directly oppositional to like the Western hegemonic forces that obviously want to control the resources in the region. So they used the intelligence agencies to put a coup in, to put a very oppressive regime in place that was against the interests of the Iranian people. And then after living within this regime for 20, 25 years, then the revolution happens. And so the friends were also talking a little bit about how to defend themselves, how to support like the defense of Iran or the people in Iran. And I think really it's like we've been talking quite a lot about Eastern Kurdistan or Western Iran and also the Baluchi people and the Baluchi Liberation Front and the Kurdish parties in the East. There isn't a call to pick up arms and go and attack the regime, but to prepare autonomous government, like autonomous self-government, self-administration. And so we can see there is like a distinctly fascist Islamic regime on one hand, and then on the other hand, there is like a puppet leader, or like the interests of Western powers, the interests of NATO, the United States, and the European Union. And then you have this call from people within Iran who already have self-defense institutions. They have self-defense forces. They've already been building up their own government, but it's been difficult because in Iran it's so oppressive. You have to do it underground. It's not so possible right now to do it openly and democratically. You build it underground, it's hidden. Already for decades, there's been a line. There's been a third way that's outside of Islamic fascism and outside of Western imperialism, and it's coming from the peoples themselves. And so I think it's easy to get stuck in this black and white looking and having to choose between only one fascist or another, or like from the bad to worse, but actually always from the inside, not just for Iran, but for any movement, for any country, for any people. There's always like a very democratic and there's always a democratic line, even if it's looking like it's being covered up by an oppressive one. There's always the thread of democracy that we can find in the people. And then there was also comments about being connected to the struggle, and we've been talking about, what is the place of Polish people or Europeans or people in the global north to have a relationship? What's our role in this? And I think what's really important is to understand that we're absolutely directly connected to what's happening here. As I mentioned before, it was like the UK and the US, or NATO, we can say, because NATO also conspires together.
That was the question.
Yeah, there's
No,
quite
there
this
were more.
comment.
Yeah.
Like me
Matthew.
before.
Sorry, I'm just adding context and pieces of the puzzle to help people understand. And so now, the U.S. is continuing, especially, but also the UK, also NATO, to interfere in the Middle East for their economic benefit. They have this project called the Greater Middle East Project. I think they announced it in 2023. And it's their plan to make a shipping corridor from India into the EU. And it goes through Palestine. And it goes through the Shia Crescent, which is kind of like Iran's like axis of resistance, they call it. So we see the attacks on Hezbollah. That's also an attack, or in Lebanon, not just Hezbollah. That's also part of the Shia Crescent. We see how right now, in Syria, the new government has pushed out the Assad regime, which was close to Russia. Now, NATO and the West is continuing to push away at the support that the Iranian regime had to open up the economic corridor for economic reasons. So, I'll stop here. It's kind of long, but
Thank you for your comment. Thank you. I need to stop here to give the opportunity to our esteemed panelists to answer the question. So thank you for your comment. Thank you for your comment. Thank you for your question. Ladies, the floor is yours. Any positive, optimistic ideas about the future?
Yes, because
Thank you.
I think what have been said that someone had to cut this head, and I think it is true. But on the other hand, we should not forget and not lose that from the horizon that the power that does it is equally evil. And that's the case. Because if we lose that perspective, we are lost. And this is precisely what was said here, that there is something behind, and we should see that behind. And what was said here, everywhere there is a democratic threat. And I also believe in that supporting these democratic voices, finding them and making them more audible and visible is doable. And this is something we can do because we are interconnected. So in our small scale even, and these small scales, if there are many, they count. So I am actually, even if it is the very dark moment, we should not lose hope, and we should remember about these democratic threats and about evil that sometimes makes good, and see this paradox as such, that there might be good that makes evil and evil that makes good. And that is something to remember and to help us critically also reflect on what we are doing. So, yeah, this is my hope is here.
It
Carolina?
was so perfect. I wouldn't like to describe the moment.
Okay, so
Well, so
yes.
yes, I'm not very optimistic. I know, but please remember that Iran is a very old civilization with a strong political tradition, a tradition of political survival. So the Iranian culture has survived the Arab attack, the Greek invasion, yes, in antiquity, the Arab invasion with Islam. The Islam did not, annihilate the Iranian identity and existence. It survived the Mongol invasion and so many others. So I hope it will stay alive and will revive. Maybe not right now, but certainly someday.
Okay, so
I wish the Iranians success.
Okay, so I need to cut the whole discussion here. Thank you for coming. And one more thing, yes, as we learned in 1980 that punk is not dead, I would say that Iran is also not dead. And so thank you for coming. And I have this strong, profound feeling that we have only touched the whole discussion very slightly, and well, hopefully we will be able to continue in a near future. So once again, thank you for all you coming. Thank you for online participants, and see you soon.